In this episode, we move into a part of incident management that often feels mysterious to new learners, because investigation sounds like something only specialists or forensic experts can do. The reality is more practical and more important for security leaders to understand. An incident investigation is the disciplined process of finding out what happened, how it happened, what was affected, who needs to know, and what the organization should do next based on reliable facts rather than guesses. For someone studying the Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, this topic matters because incident management is not just about reacting quickly when something looks wrong. It is also about learning enough, in a structured and defensible way, to support business decisions, protect evidence, reduce harm, and improve the organization after the immediate crisis has passed. When investigation is handled well, the organization becomes calmer, more focused, and better able to separate noise from real risk. When it is handled poorly, people can waste time, overlook important clues, misjudge the scale of the problem, and make decisions that create even more damage than the incident itself. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A helpful place to begin is with the purpose of an investigation, because beginners sometimes imagine that the goal is simply to find the attacker or identify one dramatic technical clue. In practice, incident investigation has several connected purposes, and each one supports the broader response effort. The organization needs to determine whether an incident actually occurred, understand the scope of what was affected, identify the business impact, decide whether the threat is ongoing, and gather enough information to guide containment, eradication, recovery, communication, and later review. That means investigation is not a side activity that happens separately from incident response. It is one of the main ways the organization learns what kind of response is appropriate. If a team rushes into containment without understanding what systems are involved, it may shut down the wrong service or miss the actual point of compromise. If it delays too long in trying to answer every question perfectly, it may give the threat more time to spread. Good investigation methodology balances speed with discipline so that the organization can act decisively while still building a reliable understanding of the event. One of the most important ideas for brand new learners is that investigation is a method, not a random search for suspicious details. A method gives structure to uncertainty. It helps responders decide where to start, what questions to ask, what information to collect first, how to verify what they are seeing, and when to adjust their assumptions as new evidence appears. Without a method, different team members may chase separate clues, duplicate each other's work, overlook important systems, or jump to conclusions based on the most dramatic artifact rather than the most meaningful one. A sound methodology usually begins with the initial report or alert, then moves into validation, scoping, evidence gathering, analysis, interpretation, and communication of findings. Those steps are not always neat or linear because real incidents are messy, but the method gives the team a shared way to think. That shared way of thinking is extremely valuable for a security manager because it creates consistency, helps the team stay coordinated, and makes it easier to explain decisions later to leadership, regulators, auditors, or other stakeholders who want to know why the organization responded the way it did. The early stage of investigation usually revolves around triage, which is the process of deciding whether the reported issue appears credible, urgent, and important enough to demand deeper analysis right away. Triage is not the same thing as proving the full case. It is a first sorting decision that helps the team avoid spending equal time on every alert, report, or odd behavior. A suspicious login could be a compromised account, a misconfigured script, or an employee working from an unfamiliar location, and the initial task is to gather enough context to judge whether the matter is likely harmless, possibly concerning, or clearly serious. Good triage methods look at the quality of the alert, the criticality of the system or data involved, any visible signs of malicious activity, the potential business impact, and whether there is evidence the event is still active. The value of triage is that it creates focus. For new learners, this is a major lesson because investigation is not about treating every signal as a full-scale emergency. It is about using disciplined early judgment so that limited time and attention go first to the issues most likely to harm the organization. Once an incident appears credible, investigators need to build an initial understanding of scope, and this is where many mistakes can happen if the team moves too fast or thinks too narrowly. Scope means identifying what may be affected, including systems, user accounts, applications, networks, data, business processes, and even third-party connections. An incident that first appears confined to one workstation may actually involve stolen credentials that were later used in cloud services, internal databases, or email systems. A report about a strange file may turn out to be less important than the account behavior surrounding it. Effective investigation methodologies, therefore, encourage people to ask connected questions rather than isolated ones. What was touched first, what happened next, and what other resources have some relationship to the initial indicator are all useful lines of inquiry. The point is not to assume the incident is enormous, but also not to assume it is small just because only one visible symptom appeared at the beginning. Security managers need this mindset because business decisions depend heavily on whether the organization is dealing with a local problem, a broad compromise, or something in between that still needs careful monitoring. Evidence collection is another core part of investigation methodology, and beginners should think of evidence as any reliable information that helps explain what happened. Evidence can include logs, alerts, account records, system configurations, timestamps, network activity, file changes, emails, screenshots, access histories, and observations from the people who first noticed the issue. What matters is not only having evidence, but collecting it in a way that preserves context and reduces the chance of confusion later. If the team fails to note when information was captured, where it came from, or how it relates to other observations, then even accurate data can become hard to interpret. Evidence gathering also has to be timely, because some forms of data disappear quickly or are overwritten as systems continue operating. At the same time, investigators must avoid the habit of grabbing everything without a plan, because uncontrolled collection can waste time and overwhelm the team with material that adds little value. A sound methodology focuses first on the evidence most likely to clarify the nature, scope, and impact of the incident, while preserving enough additional context to support later analysis if the case becomes more serious. A strong investigation also depends on forming and testing hypotheses, even if beginners do not always hear the process described that way. A hypothesis is a working explanation for what might be happening, and good investigators use it to guide analysis without becoming trapped by it. For example, the team may suspect credential theft, insider misuse, malware activity, or accidental misconfiguration based on early indicators. That suspicion shapes what they examine next, but it should remain provisional until evidence supports it. The danger comes when people lock onto the first explanation that feels convincing and start filtering out anything that does not fit. This is a common human tendency, especially under pressure, because simple stories feel comforting when a situation is uncertain. Good methodologies reduce that risk by encouraging teams to test alternative explanations, compare multiple sources of information, and revise conclusions when facts change. For security managers, this matters because leaders often want quick answers, yet the quality of those answers depends on whether the team can investigate with discipline instead of forcing the evidence to match a preferred theory too early. Timeline analysis is one of the most useful techniques in incident investigation because it helps transform scattered events into a coherent narrative. When investigators build a timeline, they are asking what happened first, what followed, how quickly activity progressed, and where key decision points or turning points may have occurred. This can reveal whether an issue was a brief failed attempt, a slow-moving compromise, a sudden operational failure, or a pattern that existed long before anyone noticed it. Timelines also help separate cause from consequence. A system crash, for example, may look like the starting point of an incident when it is really the result of earlier unauthorized changes, a broken process, or some other activity that occurred hours or days before. For new learners, timeline thinking is powerful because it replaces the instinct to focus only on the most visible symptom. Incident investigation becomes much more effective when the team asks not just what is wrong now, but what chain of events led to the present state and what that change says about intent, reach, and business impact. Another important methodology is correlation, which means connecting related pieces of information so that the team can see the broader meaning of individual observations. A single failed login might mean very little on its own, but repeated failed logins across several systems, followed by a successful authentication from an unusual location, followed by access to sensitive records, paints a much more concerning picture. Correlation can occur across technical sources such as endpoint logs, network records, authentication histories, and application activity, but it can also include business context. If unusual access patterns line up with employee departures, vendor issues, policy exceptions, or high-value financial events, the investigation may take on a very different meaning. Correlation is what helps the team move beyond isolated clues and toward understanding whether they are seeing coincidence, misconfiguration, negligence, or deliberate malicious action. For a CISM learner, this matters because leadership decisions are rarely made from one data point. They are made from patterns, relationships, and cumulative evidence that clarifies both the risk and the likely response path. Investigation methodologies must also account for the human side of the incident, because not every relevant fact comes from a machine-generated record. People often provide the first indication that something is wrong, and interviews or direct conversations can reveal details that do not appear clearly in logs or alerts. A user may remember receiving a strange message, noticing a device behaving differently, or being asked to perform an unusual action. An administrator may recall a last-minute change, a failed update, or an emergency access request that seemed routine at the time but now looks more important. These human inputs are valuable, but they also need careful handling because memory can be incomplete, assumptions can creep in, and people may unintentionally describe conclusions rather than observable facts. Good methodology encourages investigators to distinguish between what someone directly saw, what they inferred, and what they heard from others. That distinction helps maintain clarity and reduces the chance that the investigation becomes distorted by rumor, blame, or hindsight. Security managers should understand this well, because organizational culture influences whether people share useful information openly or become hesitant and defensive during incident review. A disciplined investigation also requires knowing when to escalate, when to involve specialists, and when the issue has implications beyond the immediate technical team. Some incidents raise legal concerns, privacy obligations, contractual responsibilities, fraud indicators, safety risks, or regulatory reporting questions. Others may require deeper forensic analysis, support from external experts, or coordination with senior leadership because the potential impact extends far beyond the affected system. Investigation methodology should therefore include decision points for broader involvement rather than assuming the response team can or should handle everything alone. One of the signs of maturity in incident management is knowing the limits of current knowledge and current expertise. Escalation is not a sign of failure. It is often a sign that the organization recognizes the incident's significance and wants to ensure the investigation is handled with the right perspective and authority. For a beginner, this is a useful corrective to the idea that good investigators solve everything themselves. In reality, effective investigation often depends on bringing in the right people at the right time and ensuring the business understands the seriousness of what is being discovered. Throughout the investigation, documentation is essential because the organization needs a clear record of what was known, what was done, what evidence supported those actions, and how conclusions were reached. This is not merely a paperwork exercise for later review. Good documentation helps the team coordinate in real time, especially when multiple people or shifts are involved. It also helps prevent confusion when assumptions change, because the record shows what was believed at different stages and why those beliefs were updated. If leadership asks why a system was isolated, why a notification was sent, or why a specific conclusion was reached, the documentation should provide a rational trail. Later, that same record supports lessons learned, compliance needs, legal review, or insurance discussions if those become relevant. For new learners, the key point is that memory is not enough during an incident. Stress, urgency, and complexity make informal recollection unreliable. Investigation methodologies that require disciplined documentation create continuity, accountability, and credibility, which are all vital when the organization must explain its actions to others after the incident is over. A common mistake in investigations is stopping too soon once the most visible symptom has been explained, because that can leave deeper causes or broader effects unexamined. A malicious file might be removed, a stolen account might be disabled, or a broken system might be restored, and everyone may feel pressure to move on quickly. But a sound methodology asks whether the team truly understands the root cause, the full scope, and the conditions that allowed the incident to occur. If not, the organization may repeat the same mistake, overlook lingering compromise, or learn the wrong lesson from the event. Root cause analysis, RCA, is often important here, not because every incident has one simple cause, but because most incidents reveal a combination of technical weakness, process failure, human error, or control gaps that deserve attention. When security managers appreciate this part of the methodology, they help shift the organization from merely ending the immediate disruption to actually improving resilience. Investigation is most valuable when it produces understanding that reduces future risk, not just a short-term sense of relief. By the time an investigation reaches its later stages, the most important outcome is not a dramatic narrative or a perfect level of certainty, but a reasoned understanding that the organization can use to act wisely. Good incident investigation methodologies help teams validate what happened, define what was affected, preserve and interpret evidence, test competing explanations, build timelines, correlate data, engage the right stakeholders, and document decisions in a way that supports both immediate response and future improvement. For someone new to CISM, the big takeaway is that investigation is not detective fiction and not technical improvisation. It is a structured management discipline that brings order to uncertainty and turns scattered facts into decisions the business can trust. Strong investigations make containment more effective, recovery more accurate, communication more credible, and post-incident learning far more valuable. That is why this topic matters so much in security leadership. An organization does not become better at incident management by reacting faster alone. It becomes better by investigating carefully enough to understand what truly happened and by using that understanding to protect the business more intelligently the next time trouble appears.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.